And you're live.
It's 5:05 and welcome into a Wednesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. This morning we are learning details about how State Auditor Dave Boliek is urging the North Carolina Court of Appeals to reverse a lower court ruling that blocked him from assuming oversight of the State Board of Elections starting tomorrow. Governor Josh Stein has secured a court order to prevent the shift of power towards Boliek to take place. Boliek is supporting state legislative leaders in their request for a temporary stay and an order that is called a writ of supersedes. The stay and writ would block the 2-1 ruling last week from a panel of Superior Court judges. Without the court order, state law would have had allowed Boliek to make his new election board appointments Thursday and assume administrative oversight of the North Carolina State Board of Elections. Boliek and the legislative leaders, as you are well aware, are Republicans. Stein is a Democrat. The appeals court has set a 10 a.m. deadline today for Stein to respond to the lawyers' requests from state legislative leaders, and in a press release released from Boliek's office, it reads as follows, quote, "The state auditor's office is a constitutional office of the state of North Carolina. My office fulfills its statutory obligations as prescribed by law, including the General Assembly's decision to transfer election board appointments to the state auditor. I am prepared to take the transfer," Boliek continued by saying the State Board of Election leadership has been shifting blame away from their own inability to effectively manage. I will appoint election board members who uphold the law and put their focus towards counting legal votes, effectively tabulating, and consistency across counties. He said there is even more at stake than the election board appointments in this case. Governor Josh Stein's legal team is arguing that his office controls the 9 other independently elected statewide officials that sit on the North Carolina Council of State. I stand firmly against his power grab and will continue battling in the courts. Just a quick recap as to how we got here. Stein sued state legislative leaders over provisions in Senate Bill 382 last year that shifted election board appointments and oversight to the state auditor Dave Boliek. The auditor intervened in the lawsuit as a defendant. The trial court was split in a 2-1 decision back on April the 23rd in ruling for Stein in the election board dispute. The Superior Court judges granted a summary judgment to the governor, effectively ending the case without a trial taking place. Legislative leaders, which include leaders in the North Carolina General Assembly, filed a petition on Friday with the appeals court as they seek to block and eventually reverse the trial judge's decision. Obviously, that has not happened yet. Tomorrow was set to be the day, May 1, when Dave Boliek, the auditor, would take over control of the State Board of Elections with appointments and administrative oversight. That is not going to happen as it stands right now. We will await additional details from the legal and court system here in North Carolina. We've got additional coverage this morning over on our website, carolinajournal.com. And, of course, we'll keep you up to date right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:08, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Questions about contaminated water, also known as PFAS, has gained a lot of national attention over the last decade or so. In the state of North Carolina, many areas have been ground zero for this PFAS contamination. There is some legislation working its way through the North Carolina General Assembly that we are tracking this morning. To get some details on that, Brianna Kraemer, carolinajournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Brianna, if you rolled the clock back 20 years, most folks would not even have any idea what the term PFAS meant. And over the last 15, 20 years, it has ballooned across the United States. What's going on in Raleigh as it relates to that this morning?
Yeah. Hey, Nick. Over recent months, lawmakers in North Carolina's House and Senate have been grappling with how to respond to contamination in the state's rivers by PFAS, which are known as forever chemicals. These harsh chemicals that are used in manufacturing of goods such as like pots and pans, for instance, and waterproof clothing. It's in a lot of the things all around us that we're exposed to, but the concern is in our water sources. And so we have lawmakers trying to discuss how to take action and make sure our water is clean and to address some contaminated areas in North Carolina. And so both chambers have been pushing through legislation in recent months. And most recently, the Senate's budget offers some help in addressing this concern. They offer up some funding to do additional research in the years ahead.
You know, one of the kind of underreported stories of these forever chemicals, PFAS, is that local water systems throughout the state of North Carolina, ratepayer-funded systems, Brianna, have been on the hook to fund, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of infrastructure projects, whether that be granular activated carbon filtration or reverse osmosis systems throughout the state. Taxpayers and ratepayers have had to pay for all of this while many of the polluters continue to operate in that manner. This has been a tough issue for lawmakers across the state to navigate.
Yeah, definitely. That's something interesting that legislators actually have been discussing, is the fact that different counties have had to front the bill. And then this really goes to the ratepayers. So, for example, the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority spent $83 million in ratepayer funds to address PFAS contamination in their water supply. And then in Brunswick County, they spent $159 million to expand and install a low-pressure reverse osmosis water treatment system. So this is in a House bill actually addressing this issue of the cost and who that should fall on, if that should fall on the polluter that is possibly contaminating water sources. So that's on the House side, one of the bills that they were discussing recently.
The two examples that you bring up in southeastern North Carolina all stem from the Chemours, previously DuPont Fayetteville work site, which is in Bladen County, that it came to light about a decade or so ago that that company had been polluting the Cape Fear River Basin for the better part of almost 40 years. While there is legal battles and litigation going on, Brianna, that could take years, decades potentially to play out in the court system. And in the meantime, these public utility authorities, they have to act very quickly because they're responsible for delivering clean drinking water to their customers.
Yeah, and this is a growing conversation with lawmakers, elected officials at the local level, all the way up to the state level, and then, of course, the federal level with the EPA and different organizations trying to address the health concerns. I mean, PFAS have been linked to cancer and developmental issues and just serious health risks that they're wanting to do more research on because they're called forever chemicals because they're impossible to break down, which is something that research is helping to find out different ways that we can clean our water supply and go to some alternatives. So this is something that's ongoing. And then, as you mentioned, Chemours, they've had some issues in southeastern North Carolina. They did have a representative at the General Assembly who said that the company voluntarily ceased all of their emissions into the Cape Fear River when concerns became apparent in 2017. And so they respectfully suggested that some of these laws not be enacted.
Brandon, you spent a lot of time down at the legislature, and it seems like we've got kind of two dueling things going on here. You mentioned that Senate Republicans are working this out through the budget process. Meanwhile, House Republicans are introducing legislation. Is it safe to assume that as the budget negotiations continue and go on, we'll likely see something more cohesive between both chambers over the next couple of weeks?
You know, I think that we really will see something because we're seeing both sides take action. And it's also a bipartisan issue when you think about, the health concerns and the funding. Both Republicans and Democrats are supportive of this. On the Senate side, in their budget, they would like to commit $110 million over the next 2 years to create the PFAS mitigation fund. To do research, further testing, and to help protect communities. So that's a significant amount of funding from the Senate side. And then on the House side, there are several bills that have been moving forward in committees in the past couple months here House Bill 569, for example, it's called PFAS, pollution and polluter liability. And that would address contamination in water sources that go into a public utility, like we discussed. And also notably, when we're talking about solutions and potential options for legislators to take to navigate this issue, there is new technology. There's a Burlington-based company that is doing research and creating new technology to eliminate PFAS, most of them from water supplies. So they've heard from companies and different experts in this field on the problem, but also the solution moving forward.
Brianna, there's a lot that goes into this, a lot of past coverage, obviously future coverage as we continue to track these details. Where can folks get the latest on that this morning?
Yeah, you can read the latest story at carolinajournal.com.
A great update this morning. Brianna Kraemer from carolinajournal.com joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:15, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time to get a look at traffic on your Wednesday morning. Look at the roadways with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Good.
It's 521. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Streaming live this morning on our Carolina Journal YouTube channel. You can also keep up to date with the show 24/7 by checking out our podcast wherever you get your shows, whether that be Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Just search for the Carolina Journal News Hour. Tap the subscribe or follow button and take a new program with you each and every weekday morning. It's the Carolina Journal News Hour podcast. Download and subscribe now. Local governments in Western North Carolina are now eligible to apply for funding through a new $55 million state infrastructure program aimed at helping small businesses recover from the impacts of Hurricane Helene. The North Carolina Department of Commerce, through its Rural Economic Development Division, is administering the Small Business Infrastructure Grant Program. The program will provide grants of up to $1 million to local governments to support infrastructure projects with a goal of supporting small businesses that employ 150 or fewer employees. In an announcement yesterday, Governor Josh Stein said, quote, "Western North Carolina's economy is dependent on its vibrant downtowns and small businesses, and helping them recover is critically important. This new grant program will reinvigorate the infrastructure that small businesses depend on, and I appreciate the General Assembly appropriating these funds." The Small Business Infrastructure Grant Program, also known as SMBiz, will utilize state funds appropriated by the North Carolina General Assembly as part of the Disaster Recovery Act of 2025 Part 1. It's important to note that this fund is not related to a separate federal community development block grant program that we talked about yesterday that was recently approved by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. A completely different grant there. Obviously, a lot of grants and a lot of money flowing, so maybe some confusion. Grants awarded through the program must be used by local governments to address qualifying infrastructure needs resulting from the impact of Hurricane Helene. The Department of Commerce will work with local governments and affected small businesses to determine which needs qualify. Some examples of eligible projects listed include repair or improvements to water, sewer, gas, telecommunication, high-speed broadband, electrical utilities, sidewalks, curbs, as well as other repairs that remove barriers and restore or improve access to impacted small businesses. The North Carolina Commerce Secretary in Lee Lilly said, quote, "Successful recovery from disasters of Helene's magnitude require everyone to pull together and marshal support from many different sources, both state and federal. I am grateful that the North Carolina General Assembly has quickly provided funds for this vital new infrastructure program." There is an application portal that has been set up on the Commerce website, commerce.nc.gov. And again, this money is not directly for the small businesses. However, this money is for infrastructure grants for towns and municipalities to apply for in order to provide some additional service that could help those businesses, as was noted in the example, various utilities, high-speed internet, sidewalks, sewer, water services, some very interesting details in that. A lot of money continues to flow out to Western North Carolina. We'll keep an eye on the details right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour and, of course, on our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 525, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Immigration has been a big-time national discussion over the last 100 days, a lot of that flowing out of Washington, D.C. and the new Trump administration. However, many states, including North Carolina, are working on various pieces of legislation that would include stricter penalties for individuals that are deemed illegally in the United States of America. To talk about some of that as it relates to North Carolina, Brianna Kraemer, CarolinaJournal.com's got the details this morning. Brianna, big-time national discussions, many state legislators dealing with various laws and penalties. What's going on here in North Carolina?
Yeah, hey, Nick, this is an ongoing discussion in the North Carolina General Assembly, all things illegal immigration and how to deal with ICE, how to deal with illegal aliens in the state. And now North Carolina could soon impose harsher sentences for illegal immigrants. A new bill under consideration in the House right now increases felony charges for individuals that are unlawfully present in the United States, particularly illegal immigrants with prior federal immigration convictions.
Brianna, with this discussion, however, not everybody in the North Carolina General Assembly is in favor of this. Partisan lines have been drawn pretty clearly as it relates to immigration issues at both the national and local stage as well. What's been the reaction from North Carolina lawmakers?
Yeah, so it was in one of the House committees on Tuesday, House Bill 261. And like I said, it would bolster charges against illegal immigrants convicted of crimes, and then back here again in North Carolina. But yes, definitely a partisan divide here. Representative Laura Budd, she's a Democrat from Mecklenburg County, and she questioned this outright during the Judiciary Committee. She said, why the enhancement of a sentence for someone who's not here legally? Are we punishing them just because they're not here legally with papers? Is that why we're going to ramp up the punishment? And in response to that, Representative Neil Jackson, a Republican, said, yes, ma'am, it's for people that have come here and already have been convicted of being here illegally, and to let them know you can't come to North Carolina and commit serious crimes. So if it passes, the bill would increase the charges by one class for individuals unlawfully present. And this is something that obviously is going to gain more attention as it goes forward through the committee process, and definitely a partisan divide on this type of legislation.
And I guess turning our attention to the federal level, where it seems like a lot of this really began with the election of President Donald Trump back in November of last year. Brianna, you couldn't escape it. He ran a large part of his entire presidential campaign on the issue of illegal immigration and crime related to illegal immigration. North Carolina voters saw that on play on the national stage, and many of them voted for the president, who was successful in winning the state for a third election in a row. And with that, I'm safe to say that many voters probably support some of these measures.
I would say certainly so. We saw that last year. Obviously, it was an intense political year leading up to the presidential election. And we saw through lots of polling, some of our Carolina Journal polls as well showed that voters were fed up with the trajectory of our border policies, and they wanted to secure the border and make some policy changes in regards to illegal immigration and cracking down on it and addressing issues with ICE. That's something that the General Assembly even passed last year at the end of the year, requiring sheriffs in North Carolina to cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement. And so we've continued to see lots of policies at the state level and the federal level go forward for the open border policies that had been in place. It's something that, we saw a lot of support for last year, and it's something legislators are obviously still keying on and wanting to implement further policy changes to have an actual effect here in North Carolina.
We'll obviously continue to track this legislation as it works its way through the North Carolina General Assembly. You can read more details by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. Brianna Kraemer joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:29, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Another look at the roadways this morning, a look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Thank you, Nick. We're in great shape.
It's 5:35. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Lawmakers in the North Carolina General Assembly are back after their spring break last week. A very popular and packed committee meeting room yesterday dealt with medical malpractice as it relates to transgender surgeries. Two young women who once identified as transgender urged North Carolina lawmakers on Tuesday to pass a bill that would give people more time to sue doctors for transgender medical procedures made during their youth, decisions that they now say left them permanently harmed without legal resource. Two high-stakes bills making their way through the House Judiciary 2 Committee yesterday afternoon stirred some intense debate over who has the authority and accountability over children's medical care, parents, doctors, or the state. We'll start off with House Bill 606. That would give individuals who underwent gender-related medical treatments as minors, such as hormone therapy or surgery, the power to sue their healthcare providers until the age of 28, 10 years after entering adulthood. Supporters said it would give young people time to fully understand the lifelong impacts of their decisions, while critics argued it opens the door to a wave of lawsuits against doctors who are providing said care. According to some statistics from the NC Values Coalition shared with lawmakers during the committee meeting, as high as 13% of individuals who transition will then go through the process of detransitioning, most often occurring 5 years after transitioning at the age of 23. The bill also bars the use of state funds for gender transition procedures for both minors and prisoners, blocking access to puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries under most state-funded programs. Those are some of the details in House Bill 606. We then turn our discussion to House Bill 519, titled the Parents' Medical Bill of Rights. That would revamp the medical landscape for minors in North Carolina. It reverses long-standing rules that allowed teens to seek care, like treatment for things like mental health, without a parent's involvement. It also gives broader access to their child's medical records and requires consent for any vaccine that is not fully FDA approved. Together, the bills signal a major shift in how North Carolina handles youth health care, especially care related to gender identity. Supporters frame this legislation as a stand for parental rights and child protection, while opponents warn it could dismantle access to critical care and politicize private medical decisions. The two proposals could have far-reaching consequences, stirring mixed reactions from the public, who did make their voices heard yesterday afternoon. Many speakers filled the room on both in support and against the two bills. Left-wing groups argued against both bills, while conservative-minded groups advocated for them. We'll start with one individual who spoke on this, Prisha Mosley, a woman who detransitioned years after experiencing many medical complications. She spoke in favor of House Bill 606 as a way to hold doctors accountable by extending the statute of limitation. She told the committee, quote, "At the age of 16, I began medicalized gender transition in North Carolina. Even though my doctors did this to me roughly 10 years ago, it was only 10 months ago that I faced horrific surgical complications as a result of their actions." She went through the process of describing birth and some of the major issues that were a result of the surgery that took place when she was just 16 years old. Mosley went on to say that it took her many years to realize that the transition was not going to actually change her sex and that doctors had misled and harmed her. She continued to receive new diagnoses and face complications as a result of hormone therapy and surgery. She noted, quote, "My life has been permanently altered by medical harm, and it was most likely shortened as a result. Despite all of this, I have been unable to hold my doctors fully accountable in the courts for medical malpractice. The statute of limitation for this type of surgery is too short. I need justice, and so do many other North Carolinians." Another individual who spoke at the committee meeting was Elle Palmer, another person who is going through the process of detransitioning. This is what she had to say at the committee meeting yesterday.
My name is Elle Palmer. I'm a detransitioner, and I support HB 606. When I was 15, I told my parents I was a boy trapped in a girl's body. They took me to Planned Parenthood so the doctors could talk some sense into me. I told the doctors about my bipolar diagnosis, sexual abuse, and multiple mental hospital visits all before I was 14, but they prescribed me testosterone anyway. After 2 years, my doctor encouraged me to get a non-medically necessary hysterectomy. Because I said I was a boy, he was okay with permanently sterilizing me at age 18. 4 years later, I contacted a law firm. The doctors had harmed me at every turn, but the lawyers told me the statute of limitations had already passed and there was nothing they could do. I transitioned as a child. I couldn't see into the future, but I shouldn't have been expected to. I needed more than 3 years to understand the lifelong regret that gender transition causes. That's why the extension of the statute of limitations is so critical. Please pass House Bill 606 so people like me who didn't understand the life sentence they signed up for will be able to get justice. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Elle Palmer during the committee meeting yesterday describing the process that they went through, a horrific story taking place there. As you can imagine, the gender debate has caused an incredible amount of controversy across the United States and here in North Carolina. We're continuing to track details on this legislation. You can read the full story, and we've got some additional video content this morning from a 2023 interview that Carolina Journal did with the first individual we talked about, Prisha Mosley. That is available on our website this morning at carolinajournal.com. Taking a look at some other statewide news this morning, we are continuing to track what has been a busy week in the North Carolina General Assembly. As I mentioned, lawmakers finally back after their spring break. A new bill under consideration could increase felony charges for individuals unlawfully present in the United States, particularly illegal immigrants with prior federal immigration convictions. According to details, if passed, the bill would increase felony charges by 1 or 2 classes for individuals unlawfully present in the United States, especially those with prior federal immigration convictions. During public testimony, the General Counsel with the North Carolina Conference of District Attorneys clarified that sentence enhancement provisions only apply to a person convicted of a felony who is found to have previously been convicted of re-entry or removal in the United States. The General Counsel noting, quote, "So you have to be illegally in the country, convicted in federal court, and removed, then re-enter the state and commit a new felony before this provision would apply." Some speakers against the bill argued that the law is discriminatory and unconstitutional. One individual, Mark Swallow, who is a representative with the left-wing group Democracy Out Loud, said, quote, "I think this bill is unconstitutional. Immigration status is a civil matter, not a criminal one. Being undocumented is not itself a criminal offense under U.S. law. Equal protections, due process rights under the U.S. Constitution apply to everyone, regardless of immigration status." The committee did move forward with this legislation. It did pass yesterday out of the Judiciary 2 committee, and that committee also passed a bill yesterday, or passed legislation yesterday that would alter death penalty laws in North Carolina. The legislation, House Bill 260, would allow death row inmates to choose their method of execution, no longer relying solely on lethal injection. According to Representative David Willis, the Republican out of Union County, he said, quote, "The death penalty has pretty much been on a moratorium since 2006. It's been tied up in courts for a number of reasons. This bill would follow South Carolina law that was recently enacted that got around those legal challenges and has been moving forward successfully." End quote there from Representative Willis. A lot of news out of the General Assembly. You can read more details on that story and everything else we've covered this morning by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:45, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Another look at traffic this morning. Look at the roadways with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks, Nick.
It's 5:51. Good morning again. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. Agriculture, which is North Carolina's leading industry with an annual economic impact of $111 billion, not only faces increasing tariff concerns, which we've talked about over the last few weeks, but also a significant labor shortage. Challenges face the labor market, including regulatory restrictions, challenges to the H-2A visa program, and persistent barriers to technological advancements. There's a new report out. It's called Harvest on Hold, North Carolina's Agricultural Labor Shortage. It was a report commissioned by the John Locke Foundation, and it examines the labor shortage faced by farmers and ways to address it. Finally, the report proposes policy solutions to address some of those shortages. Kelly Lester, the author of the report and policy analyst for the Center for Food, Power, and Life at the John Locke Foundation, told the Carolina Journal, quote, "Farmers are dealing with a hard-to-predict yields, small profit margins, and as of recently, tariffs. Most particularly, small to mid-sized farms cannot simply pay the same wages as competing industries and provide job security year-round. It's just not that simple. Filling these needed farm jobs require a manufactured approach outlined in this detailed report. The decline in workforce is attributed to rising wages in competing industries and immigration policies impacting the H-2A visa program. The shortage has been exacerbated by aging farm populations and decline in migration from Mexico, forcing increased reliance on international labor as costs rise." Kelly Lester continued by saying, as Mexico's economies grow and anti-immigration policy and rhetoric are continuously thrown around in the executive branch, fewer and fewer migrants are coming in from Mexico. On the other side of it, Americans are very uninterested in agricultural work, with many low-skilled laborers choosing higher-paying year-round work like construction. This is very bad news for farmers who are already struggling to find enough laborers. Historically, the American agricultural workforce has heavily relied on foreign labor, especially from places like Mexico. In fact, almost 70% of U.S.-based crop farm workers are immigrants, with the majority being from Mexico, according to the National Agricultural Workers Survey. According to the Locke report, farm labor from Mexico has declined in recent years due to declining birth rates and stricter immigration policies in the United States. The challenge is further intensified by growing competition from labor from other industries that provide higher wages, improved working conditions, as well as stable year-round employment, according to the report from the John Locke Foundation. Fields like construction, food service, and manufacturing have become increasingly appealing to workers who might otherwise have considered agricultural jobs. Given the physically demanding nature of farm work and its comparatively low pay, agriculture is becoming one less attractive option when more favorable alternatives are available. The report reads in part, quote, "One of the most significant factors exacerbating farm labor shortages in the United States is the increasing shift of agricultural workers into the construction sector. This movement is largely drawn by economic incentives, as construction offers significantly higher wages and in many cases better working conditions compared to farm labor." End quote there from the report. North Carolina ranks fourth among states regarding the percentage of agricultural workers and workforce employed via the H-2A visa program. More than 25,000 workers are certified in the state under that program. North Carolina's dependence on the H-2A program is due to the divisive nature of agriculture, of the agricultural landscape, which spotlights sweet potatoes, tobacco, Christmas trees, all very labor-intensive crops. The report reads, quote, "North Carolina's agriculture employers face particular challenges due to the seasonal nature of their crops and the shrinking availability of domestic labor. Many of these employers rely significantly on H-2A workers to meet labor needs during the critical harvest periods of the crop. While the program has been crucial in sustaining agricultural output, it also imposes considerable administrative and financial burden on the employers, particularly smaller farmers who continually have limited resources. The report details some of the challenges faced with that visa program, including the red tape, supply constraints, and inconsistencies regarding worker production. It also addresses recruitment challenges and solutions to technological advances, many of those taking place in the farming industry. However, with those technological advancements, they do come with an incredibly high price tag. Many of the new pieces of farm equipment cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to purchase and fully implement. You can read more details on this story this morning, as well as the full report, Harvest on Hold, by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. That's going to do it for a Wednesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.